Squishies, welcome back to another vlog. This is Dirty Pair, Affair of Nolandia, which is sort of a movie, sort of an OAV. I'm not 100% clear on how it was released, but it's one of those two things. This was interesting. It's a very different take, I feel like, than the TV series, and I think that's really what it needed. The TV series was pretty clearly running out of steam by the end, but here we have something that's much more serious-minded. It's still got plenty of humor, but it's not primarily a comedy. It's a science fiction series that has some humor in it, or a science fiction movie that has some humor in it. And I don't know if that's a register that works better for them precisely. I still feel like the best example of Dirty Pair being Dirty Pair, which is not necessarily the same thing as the best episode, but like the episode I would show someone to say, this is Dirty Pair, this is what you should be watching, would still be the one with that cat that's got the super steroids in it, just for the sublime ridiculousness of the car chase sequence in that. But I feel like the writers exhausted themselves on that interpretation, so trying something different makes sense, and it mostly works here. I have some issues. I was really enjoying this. I was enjoying the implication that Kay and Yuri had a psychic vision of Misne, but in that vision they were one. I'm sure shippers had a field day with that. They weren't called shippers yet in 1985, 6, but the practice certainly existed. And I'm sure it existed in Japan too. I liked that. I liked the whole playing around with illusions. And I really, no, sorry, before that, I really liked the setting. It's pretty clearly referencing Plateau, which is a planet in Larry Niven's Known Space Stories, which similarly is on a planet with a thick atmosphere that isn't really safe for human habitation except for one giant plateau. What's different here is the existence of that forest. And that forest is really cool. I love the very obviously Return of the Jedi inspired shots when they're flying through on their speeders. I love the creatures that live there. The unicorn is a fantastic design. It really gives a new take on unicorns, which is, there's been a lot of takes on unicorns, but I don't think I've seen one that was quite so leonine before, and I like that a lot. And actually, I think what it reminds me a lot is the Kirin, the Japanese unicorn, with the kind of downward pointing horn and the kind of almost furriness, but with the coloration it came across as like I said, leonine, and that was an interesting combination. Where I got a little is, if you've seen this, you know what I'm about to talk about. If you haven't, content warning, there is an implied tentacle rape scene. Misne is projecting illusions into Kay and Yuri's minds, and Kay has a nightmare within an illusion of spending time with Yuri, I think. It gets a little confusing, in a good way. It should be confusing, but it gets a little confusing about what illusion kind of embodies which other illusion. Because it's illusions within illusions all the way down. But Kay has a nightmare, which I'm kind of avoiding trying to talk about because I really didn't like it. In which she is grabbed by a tentacle monster. It is very clearly doing just what tentacle monsters do in the nastier sort of hentai. And then it just straight up wars her. And she spends the whole thing screaming and then wakes up screaming. Only to, a few minutes later, have another nightmare in which the monster attacks, chases her inescapably through the forest. Nothing she can do allows her to escape it, and then it grabs Yuri. And she wakes up back at headquarters and sees that Yuri is still, like, in the embrace of the tentacle monster. And wakes up screaming. It's pointless and gross and clearly only there because somebody wanted to see Kay and Yuri get attacked by a tentacle monster. If they were, people as opposed to drawings, I'd call it exploitative. Like if it was actual actors or something like that. As it is, somebody was pretty clearly drawing this one-handed. And that's gross. And then there's some weirdness too around the police chief, who is not named Sanasaran, but her name is close enough to that I can't think of what her actual name is. Samara, I think. Samara Gallon, something like that. It's real close to Samasaran, to the point that it makes me wonder if, Samus was named that as a reference to this woman, though beyond the name, there's not that much connection. They're both pretty badass, but Samus rather more so. Anyway, Samara has that, Bond girl plot where she's romantically connected to the villain, but starting to realize that he's evil, and then ultimately turns against him. And it's pretty cliche and kind of sexist in that it's built on the idea of women as being less loyal than men, which is only intensified by her men remaining loyal to her. In the ensuing power struggle between her and Oren. I don't know, it's not any... I probably would have paid it little to no attention if I hadn't been primed by the tentacle scenes to kind of look at this movie kind of side-eye a bit on those kinds of issues. So I'm less than enthused about her, which is too bad because I freaking love her character design. It is a great character design, and the moments where she gets to be awesome are awesome. What else is there to say about this movie? I mean, there's a lot, but I'm not sure how to put it coherently. Because coherent is not something that this movie tries very hard to be, especially in its first half. Once it gets down to, extended chase sequence, once Misne is taken out of the picture, it kind of solidifies up until the point where the moment they kill Oren and destroy the thing that creates Misne's happens to be the precise moment she wakes up. And then she and the other creations of Oren and his science team destroy the plateau and kill, presumably, everyone, Samara included. And Kay and Yuri basically leave. That is a very dark take on the kind of property damage that they do in the show. because, and this actually happens a few times throughout the movie, there's a very clear death toll in this movie. They are not just knocking people out, occasionally blowing up something. No, people are getting slaughtered in this movie. There are multiple shots of piles of bodies. Just, sometimes they're people that are engaged in fights, but then during the chase sequence at the airport, it's just a bunch of bystanders that are in kills, and that's what drives Yuri to have her, moment of sniping a large airplane through a tiny hole. And then the whole plateau blows up, killing, again, everyone except possibly Miss Ney and the others, but even that isn't clear, and Kay and Yuri's conversation at the end of the episode could be implied as saying that they believe she survived and is free now, or it could be implied as them saying that she is dead and free now. So that doesn't really help clear things up either. Again, I'm fine with it being ambiguous. I'm just saying that makes it a lot darker than the show has been, which in some ways is needed. In other ways, tentacle monstery ways, it's really not. But okay. Clearly it is tapping into some kind of zeitgeist, because there are clear similarities here, clear connections to stuff like Akira. And Nausicaa. I don't know if it's borrowing from them or just tapping into the same things going on, but there's clearly this sense of technology in general and biology in particular running amok, and the creations of something like genetic engineering becoming the instrument by which nature punishes humanity for our hubris and our damage to it. That really seems to be a strong theme in Japan in the 80s. And this movie taps into that fully. At the same time, it's also playing around with layers of reality and getting inside characters' heads in ways that, a decade later, Evangelion would bring that into the mainstream of anime. But you don't see that often in the years leading up to that, except in things like this and Akira. And even Akira, the anime, doesn't do that much with it. So this is interesting stuff, and really, it's not great, but it's good. I can't recommend it without, if I tell someone to watch this, I'm gonna have to warn them about that scene, or those scenes. But it's a really interesting piece of anime history, happening at a really interesting time, and yeah, that alone makes it worthwhile. So yeah, I think that's about it. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Check out my Patreon for early access to vlogs, essays, let's plays, and more. And I'll see you all next time. Bye!